Good evening. The Design Review Board Number 2 public meeting of May 31st, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door. Submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his discretion. Roll call. Board Member Insua is not present. Board Member Palmer? Here. Board Member Simonian?
Present.
Board Member Yu?
Here.
Chairman Ellis?
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on May 24th, 2012. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards. None present. Which brings us to the calendar and staff announcements. There are 2 cases on tonight's agenda. At this point in time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Ellis.
Thank you. First case is PDR 2011-033B, a continuation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board members. As you mentioned, the first case for today is at 1241 Boynton Street, case number 1, PDR 2011-033B. This case was originally reviewed by the board on September 8th of 2011, at which time it was returned for redesign, and applicant made changes, came back, and it was reviewed by the board again on February 9th of 2012, at which time it was continued for additional materials and comments regarding the design, and some changes have been made to the design while providing those details asked by the board. What I'd like to do is go over the materials posted behind you and sort of walk you through it. If you have questions, I'm available, and the applicant is here to answer also. So. Right here you see 3 designs and the original building that was existing. Here's a picture of the original building that was the original building and the plans for it. This is what's there today, and this is what was reviewed on September 8, 2011. At that time, board returned the project for redesign, and they came back with this design. They had the impression from the board that they should go back to the original look. That's why they came back with this. However, the board said, if you have a chance, come back with something different. While the case was continued for additional materials, the board also said, come back with something different that is more contemporary. If you have a chance to redesign it, do something a little different. So this is what came back. This is what we're reviewing today based on the comments made by the board. 3 of the comments were purely detail-oriented, asking for details, such as the window details, things like that, and the awnings. And 3 comments were regarding the design. One was that the gate should match with the building, and as you can see, the gate has been changed. This is the newest plan we're looking at. The gate has been changed from that we looked at on February 9th. And the wood sidings that they were providing, there was a comment that these may not survive due to the fact that it's facing a sunny side, and applicant has replaced them with green colored stucco and aluminum reveals over it. They're separated 12 inches to the center. And our last one was the architectural treatment should wrap around the building and stop at a logical location. And as we go around the southern corner, this is where the vertical elements will stop. And going around the northern corner, That's where they will stop. Thank you. And lastly, the awning or the trellis at the front has changed as well. As you can see here, it has a slope to it to match the original. Now it's completely straight, and aluminum awnings have been provided throughout the building. Staff recommends lowering these awnings closer to the window so they can actually serve a purpose of providing shade. Other than that, staff believes that treatment and the changes made to the design is compatible with the building, with the surrounding, and supports the project. I know you may have a lot of questions regarding the details. I will do my best to answer them. If I can't, applicant is here as well to your questions.
Insofar as the windows are concerned, there was some questions before about which windows had been altered and which were original, and there was
Well, the
gonna be
window
some sort of-
size, in terms of the size, from the original, I know these two windows have been altered, and now they are smaller, and all the windows will be vinyl throughout.
Are they replacing all the windows?
Correct. All the windows throughout the building will be vinyl.
And
I'm getting a negative nod from the applicant.
so we'll ask that. We'll
Yes.
ask them. I'll just ask them all the window related. Anybody else have a question?
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. I have two cards. The first would be Michael Kuzmano. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Michael Cusimano. I'm the applicant. We had anticipated that the architect would be able to join us tonight, and he notified me yesterday that he didn't realize he had a conflict. His son's graduating from high school, and
That's
he
important.
made the decision not to join us. So, we thought about, should we continue this again? But we've continued it, on several occasions. So we thought that since it was on calendar, we'd at least give you the opportunity to look at the design. Staff has spent a lot of time with the architect walking through it. So hopefully we have sufficient information to be able to answer your questions. We also have our landscape architect here tonight, if there are questions about the landscaping. This is a new architect to the project, so after the last meeting, we made the decision to bring in someone new, and we had him look at all of the comments that were made and actually had our staff transcribe each of the comments that were made from board members to try and make sure that we were hearing what was being said and try and incorporate that into the design. So staff kind of walked through some of the major elements, some of the concerns that were expressed last time about the wood elements. Those have all gone away. The one question that was raised was about the windows. When the project was undertaken a year and a half ago, the front windows that faced onto Boynton Street had deteriorated apparently because of the sun exposure. So there's buildings that are pretty close on both sides, and so the side windows don't seem to get the sun exposure, but over a long period of time, it seemed like the windows in the front had become very deteriorated. So all of those windows were changed and are now all vinyl windows, and so part of the application would be to approve those installations as they are. Two of those windows still need to be changed because they're the wrong size. So the application is to approve all the front windows being vinyl as they exist, and then to authorize changing of the one, because there's some issue about, I think, an access code. So that's the issue with the windows. So, the major elements are these aluminum fins, so to speak, that are about 3 inches deep and 1.5 inches wide. That were envisioned to create those vertical elements that seem to be reflective of that mid-century design. If the board likes them, then we can execute that. If there's a preference for something different, I heard some of the board members talking that maybe just sheet aluminum or aluminum siding was maybe more your intention. When we look back at the comments, it seemed to be looking for some independent vertical elements, and so that's what we tried to bring back to you. But we're here to try and get a design that everyone's happy with and get it done. So I'm available for any questions, as is the landscape architect.
Are any of the windows on the side being asked to be legalized as well?
No.
And are you going to change those windows?
No.
Okay, so whatever they are right now, they're staying
That's
as
correct.
is?
That's not part of the application, the perimeter windows. And if the architect got that confused, yeah. So all the windows that are around the perimeter are in good shape, and they won't be changed.
I see. Going back to the vertical elements of the siding, it would seem like it's more economical and much an easier design to implement, just having some sort of a metal vertical siding on the outside, because what is being proposed is very difficult to accomplish, and B, it's just a very uncommon detail. Do you have an affinity for the
No,
current
I don't.
proposed
What I'm
design?
trying to do is just get the design that you're going to be happy with. And if we can work through the other issues, if it would be okay, maybe I could either work with staff or bring back, an alternative metal panel.
Might
an
be more
aluminum.
economical for you, easier to construct, quicker to construct, it's an off-the-shelf item, okay, that was my question on the windows and the siding. And as far as the colors, we're presenting with a green taupish color and also a white color?
It's not really a white, it's kind of a cream.
Creamish, ivory.
A light tan, kind of a,
And the light tan is the overall building?
Yes.
And the green is the
Accent.
proposed material between the aluminum fins?
yes, that's correct.
Okay. And all the aluminum is going to be that brushed aluminum?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
The aluminum fins on the side do not protrude as far as they do in the front, is that correct?
I just noticed that when I was looking at the details. The detail that is provided was the 1.5 by 3, and I don't know that he put a detail for the sides. And one of the problems with the sides is a driveway, and it's a 1950s driveway. And so my guess is that he maybe cut those down so as to not, even restrict, a few inches might, subject that to, some car damage or something. But it appears that he has less depth on the sides than he does in the front.
Was there any reason why the eyebrows were placed at a higher than the windows? Do you have any issues with lowering them so that actually perform some sort of a shading mechanism?
My guess is that the architect was just kind of, doing it so where he thought it looked good, but if it's more functional by being lower, I'm fine with that.
The only concern that I would have is the driveway side. It's at 8 foot already. You go down much lower, you're going to have trouble with cars. Unless maybe it doesn't stick out as much on the side.
Yeah, there's no window on the side, so.
There's no window on the side.
I mean, I do have some concerns about that.
Yeah,
anything-
sticking into traffic.
It's just going to bash into that, so maybe we just hold it back
Right.
on the driveway side and try and maintain as much clearance.
Right. Stick with the look, but
Because you could have the similar material wrap around, it just doesn't
Protrude.
protrude out. It just-
That's a good idea.
And then you have the regular windows in the front. Pardon me. There's some sort of a treatment around them?
Yeah, that's my question, too.
Do you know what that is?
My understanding was that there was, Isaac, is there any details at all? Let me just go back. Everything that's there now is coming off. So just to revisit, there's some foam around the windows, there's split face, a stone treatment, like a wainscot. So all that's coming off, and everything is starting from scratch. So I don't believe that there's any additional detailing around the windows.
There is.
There are details provided for the window jamb and the seal.
Right, but it doesn't match what it looks like on the elevation, because the elevation, there's like 2 or 3 lines, looks like about 4 inches of actual, and then when you look at it here, the bent flashing is like an inch, maybe, so it won't have that kind of presence window-wise. It'll be
less than
yeah, it'll be very thin, almost look like the aluminum windows that you see here.
which is kind of what, I was going to say, what was on it originally, not what's standing there now.
Right, it almost looks like, well, yeah.
Right.
It might be better. I mean, you don't want this big bulky thing
Right.
and then have this pinstriping going on. So,
Just want it to look correct.
yeah.
Is the front facade being restuccoed in its entirety? It doesn't have to be, I'm just
Yeah,
asking. so
I guess
could
it
better
was,
visualize
the
how
plan
that-
was not to the extent possible.
Okay. So that's just basically a color?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not a finish then? It's not a smooth troweled?
It's a smooth trowel now.
Oh, it is now?
Yes. Mhm.
So I'm guessing that this is the color that's there now then?
Yes.
Okay.
And are these windows already existing windows?
Those are existing vinyl windows that were changed out a year and a half ago. And so the changes were not approved, and that's why they're in the application now to approve those windows.
I understand. And are these the ones that you're having the exiting issues
No,
on?
if you look at them, I think it's the far other side.
Okay.
Yep.
So these are going to be replaced?
They've already been replaced.
Okay, that was the question, okay.
Yep. So you've got 8 windows that are about 2 years old, and then the last 2 windows also 2 years old, but not code compliant.
Are the ones that were replaced most recently, what kind of detailing was done around the window? Is it the foam or?
It's foam now, so all that's coming off and
Okay,
starting
that's
from
okay.
scratch.
The reason why
We don't have a detail for that, for
Yeah.
what that's going to look like, right? So,
because if these windows are existing and they're going to stay, and you are not going to restucco the building, then putting some sort of a treatment around it becomes a
Well,
question of-
we'll have to do some stucco work, because you recall that's where the foam's at now, and so that foam's going to get knocked off, so there will be some,
I see. So you have a clean slate, you're going to clean
Yep.
it off and then restucco around it.
right, mhm.
I got no more questions.
All right, thank you.
Great.
I have one other card for this property. Cynthia Lee, landscape architect. Do we have any questions for her?
I have some comments. I don't know, well, yes, I do have
All right,
questions.
Ms. Lee, please state your name for the record.
Cynthia Lee, I'm with Land Shapes.
In looking at the plan, I think we had talked previously about layering the plantings, and I'm noticing the plantings, Dazzlerian and specifically, and the yuccas and things, are all grouped together, whereas normally those would be a specimen plant, and you've got them lined up 5 feet apart when they get to be 5 feet wide, so it'll be one long row of that.
There's some change. I'm not sure if you have the most current plan,
Oh.
but we did make a few changes. So there's less of those types of plants. We've substituted with Sapphire Skies yucca, which don't get as big, and they're sort of accents between the lantana.
Okay. And do we have, other than on the board, so we don't have that?
It might be that one up at the top, and I can't see from
you
here.
want to come up and look at it?
This one here?
You could come around if it
This
helps.
is what I'm looking at in our
No,
plan.
it's different than that. And I have it here.
So we need to review that. Okay.
The changes are minor.
And I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back and speak into the microphone. I apologize.
But it's being recorded, so it has to be in the microphone. You could give that to staff, and we could take a look at it.
We've made some very minor changes to that plan that you saw up there.
Is there any reason that you used the 2 deciduous trees in the front that are going to get very large in that small setback and not something that's vertical or evergreen? Was there a
Well, the Desert Museum is deciduous, but it's so fantastic in the wintertime without its leaves.
no, I understand, but then you've got the crepe myrtles also,
Right, which,
and everything is more of a rounded shape, so I just wondered if there was a reason why you didn't include something vertical, because it's a small setback, so they're going to all grow together as a low canopy. I just wondered if there was a reason.
I don't believe that they're going to grow together. The symbols that we've shown on that plan are the size at maturity, so they're close, but the Desert Museum is so lacy, and the crepe myrtle is, for me, the most beautiful when it has been thinned out a bit. I like the idea of the sun coming in the wintertime, so I prefer to have the deciduous trees, and I think both trees look fantastic in the winter anyways without their leaves.
Well, I have no problem with the plant material itself, I just wondered, we have all these vertical elements, and
Yeah,
now it's a canopy, so. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody
Anyone else?
Question? All right. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Any other questions for these guys? So we close it and, okay. Close the public hearing. Would you like to?
Sure. I think we'll start with some of the detailing that's in the building. From what I've seen on the details, we're creating or I guess the architect has proposed a detail with stucco and an aluminum product for the fins, and I think the original intent of what we've given them was to basically provide some texture at that location. Something vertical, I guess, is fine for that area. And the wood doesn't work because, it will rot out, and it'll basically get the same thing that was happening there, which was, the wood was not holding up well. I think they've taken it and they've taken sort of 10 steps ahead of it and come up with something that I think is going to be very expensive to do, labor-wise and material-wise. And I think I'd be okay with them proposing some kind of corrugated, and not the cheap corrugated, but something a little more substantial with a good gauge so it stands up to whatever's going to be out there, and it's going to be a cheaper material to put onto this building, and it'll have the same effect per se, 10 feet away. So I think I'm okay with them proposing something to mimic that pattern, but not that specific detail. Those green renderings, they don't do you any sense. They don't help you out at all because it looks sort of very green, I guess, in a sense.
Mechanical.
Yeah, very crayon 8-pack green, So I think this color is a lot nicer, and I've seen that stucco color a lot. So I'm okay with the colors. I'm okay with them keeping the existing white to contrast off of the sort of the moss green, whatever it is. I would say bring the little shading devices down to just above the window. I think that makes a lot of sense. As it turns the corner, it can project back in a little bit to allow for cars to pass. That makes sense. Let's see, the window surrounds. I still have a lot of questions. The details don't really show what's going to be coming out. There's, especially if you have the portions that stick out, 1.5 inches for the fins. Then you have a flashing piece that sits on top of that. So what happens to the gap where there is no fin? It's going to be very fragile there and all that. So I have questions about those kinds of things. But I think with some minor things, I think it's almost there. Almost there. So.
Palmer?
I agree with Mr. Yu's comments. I'll just comment on the landscaping, since we do have some changes. I don't necessarily object to the plant material, but the change plan is basically a conceptual plan, so we would need to have a detailed plan as far as locations and.
Is that, that side? Is that the same thing? That's, okay. Well, that's what's in our packet.
In our package, yeah.
Right.
Well, basically.
Okay. All right, I missed that. I
Yeah,
thought that was the same.
We'll have to try to do that. We'll go on.
Yeah,
and
we'll go on.
look
All right.
at it.
Mr. Simonian, we'll defer back.
I agree in that it's probably the best solution that is presented today is to go with the corrugated metal. You could go with a shallower corrugated metal, in which case, the flashing that goes over it and your windowsill will be an easier, more off-the-shelf detail. Plus, it's just going to look, it's going to be a nicer design. It's going to have a richer look to it, and it's going to be more cohesive with the style that you're going after, as opposed to what's presented here. I think also it's a good idea to lower the eyebrows, as staff is recommending. You're going through the cost of building it, might as well have a functional sunshade, especially in the southern sun. So that absolutely makes sense. Insofar as them wrapping around the corner, what you could do is mimic less of protrusion, both on the left and right side of the building on the ground level, and still maintaining your 30-inch pop-out on the higher levels. And if you go with less, whether it's 6 inches, 4 inches, or even 0, if it's flush, or maybe at least 4 inches, something, that will give it that thickness and that continuation. And if the whole thing is metal siding anyways, the metal fabricator is going to be able to fabricate that quite easily on site. Insofar as the window surrounds are concerned, on these windows,
I don't think the style calls for any kind of a foam molding. That's just not going to look good. You could try to recess these windows a little more, push them back as much as possible, and literally have sheet metal frames around it, so it's more of a contemporary commercial look where you have a sheet metal sill, a jamb, and a header, very similar to the detail that you're using in the surrounding areas. But that really works well when the window's recessed a bit. So you're going to have to see how you could accomplish that. If not, then you're going to have to give it some sort of a treatment. But I don't recommend a stone. I don't recommend a tile. I don't recommend a foam. I think you're really better off trying to do it with the minimalist style. The gate is quite nice. As far as the canopies are concerned, I think, in my opinion, going with that brushed aluminum product, it's a very high-end, very specific product. Not only is it a more costly material, because I remember last time budget was an issue, but at the same time, if it's not done right, if it's not fabricated right, it could really look inexpensive and it could really look cheap at the same time. And I'm not sure I would say a brushed aluminum look is very synonymous with what is being presented. I think I would recommend different color sheet metal that you're already using, maybe a contrast, and I would even create some sort of a hierarchy with a different color for the top trellis, the main one, so there is basically some sort of a grand entrance to it. You're spending the money on it, create that identity, and so I would say I wouldn't go with all brushed aluminum. I would have a contrasting color. If you have a green color that matches that, the hemlock green color is a beautiful color for siding that's very close to that. Then you could go with dark bronze around the windows, which will really be nice. And then you could maybe have, some sort of a merlot or a maroon color for the top canopy. And I think there you have it. It's done. It's simple and well designed. So those were my comments, and I think with those conditions we could, I think, help staff. And I don't see it having to come back. I think they could work out some standard details and move forward.
Did you need to finish?
Yeah, the revised plan appears to be acceptable, the changes. I would just be concerned with the location of the trees, that if you already have a narrow driveway, the Palos Verde is about 4 feet off the driveway, that could be an issue with it spreading, and that the crepe myrtles are only like 2 feet off the sidewalk, so move the Palo Verde in and the crepe myrtle back just to afford some able access for the cars and for pedestrians. So I think it's acceptable as shown, as a revised.
Okay. Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I think you've definitely moved in the right direction. I happen to like, actually, where you've gone. Are you guys okay with having staff, with the suggestion, giving them the applicant the opportunity to reconsider if it's a material cost issue?
Are we okay with reviewing it?
Does that work for?
Yeah.
All right.
The applicant isn't crazy about those aluminum fins, and it's going to be very difficult to construct and make them look good, especially the way they're drawn. So I think you're better off going in that direction. It's a much safer bet.
Right. I mean, obviously, I'm the guy who's not crazy about vinyl windows. I understand they're in, and in this project, I could live with it. Somebody want to?
Can we hear the comments?
Okay. You want to, see what type of comments and.
All right. So what we've heard so far is main consensus that we can all agree on is the treatment of the vertical aluminum sidings being replaced with corrugated metal.
I would say I'm happy with this. If he wants to build this, let him build this. But if we as a board want to give him the opportunity when he
We can put
prices
that
it
as a
out,
consideration.
the consideration, yeah. I wouldn't. I'm not looking for a change here. I don't know if
All right.
you guys are from a
Only if
design
We
standpoint.
have the details that would.
Yeah, I think what we did hear from Board Member you and Board Member Simonian is that and I would agree that this is going to be particularly difficult to construct, even if it's detailed properly what has been proposed. And what's shown is actually pretty similar in its visual effect to a corrugated metal. Now, there are a wide variety of corrugated metals that they could use. One of the questions, well, staff has a couple of questions in regards to the corrugated metal. What they're showing, like I said, looks like corrugated metal. However, if they decide not to go with a corrugated metal and want to use a different type of metal panel or even a hardy plank vertical siding, is that something that we can give them the option in the conditions to modify that, or should we specify to use some type of corrugated metal panel? So that's the first question about the metal.
I think if they're going to mimic it with a hardy, the profile has to be very similar to what they have now.
Okay.
The awnings we have to change.
So then, they'd have the whole, but then if they go with the corrugated, then there's more leniency about what the corrugated looks like. I mean, not including the sort of barnyard, side yard, corrugated,
Right.
not that, but the nicer ones, yeah.
There's also the thought where if they go into the vertical siding, then how do they treat the windows and the window trim? And it's really a whole new ball of wax, and it's very difficult for me to even...
And then they get a larger frame with the hardy.
Yeah, so it's almost,
different look, yeah.
it's a different look. So I would, when you post a question, I think if it's a corrugated metal, it's easy enough of a condition to prescribe and let them work with staff. But if they do choose to go with vertical siding, which is, if they want to do that, absolutely okay with us, then it would need, I would consider that it'd be appropriate for it to come back, because then we're really talking about a very different project and a very different style. So that's my take on it. I would love to hear everybody else's as
It
well.
would change the whole look.
I would suspect that they wouldn't be able to, because those things extruding out as a solid hardy board piece, how do you attach that back on?
Do that.
So the other question that we have, there was a comment about the color that the very deep green shown in the perspective is not working that well. However, we're aware that that's the kind of deep green that you typically will see in that kind of corrugated metal product. It's typically not the moss green. So if it's a condition that it be some kind of muted green or other muted color, we can condition that, and it would be, a custom color or a company that would make that color. Different companies have different colors that are standard.
Bearish Metal is a local supplier, and they have 3 or 4 Bearish Metal, and
How do you spell that?
now you're really putting me on the spot.
Okay.
I Google it, it'll come right
Okay,
up.
Bear-
You can't go wrong.
Beige?
Bearish Metal, yeah.
Okay.
And they have 3 or 4 lighter greens.
Oh, good.
Like a
Okay.
mossish.
They're similar to that, yeah.
Okay. So we'll include in the condition that it's a corrugated metal with a moss green or muted green color that, and then we can get to the windows in a different condition.
No, but I know what you mean, that they use a lot of that green, for example, in stadiums. And
Right.
Right.
Century
Right.
has that color.
So Mr. Nazarin can continue with the...
Thank you. All right, so now we're going down to the windows. I have a comment here stating that windows should be recessed, and if shallower corrugated metal is used, it would be easier to treat the window surrounds, and provide sheet metal surrounds as well as sill. And that, in fact, I think Mr. Samoyan's comment was to do that. Would you like to put that as a condition or a consideration to provide?
I would say consideration. They're going to need to treat it somehow. That tends to be the easiest way to deal with it if they're going to re-stucco, is to apply the same language around the window, but that's something they could work with staff on.
Yeah, I would recommend that as a condition, they bring in details for all of the windows, because some of the windows are in stucco and some of the windows have the corrugated metal, which sometimes has up to a 3-inch profile. If they're not going to reinstall the windows, since they're a nail-on window, they will likely only be recessed in the stucco about that 7/8 inch. We could include in the condition that there is a similar treatment around all the windows or not. It's up to you, but what we're hearing is that definitely around where the corrugated metal panel is, they would need to use some kind of sheet metal is the best approach. Where the stucco is, you may also want to condition a sheet metal surround. It's up to you.
Well, they need to do something.
Needs to be thought out and needs to be complemented.
Right, so why don't
It's
we,
going to be different, each one will be different, but they have to look like they go together.
so would it make sense for us to condition that applicant provides details for the window trims for the different situations that exist? And to work with staff on that?
I think they should provide the details, but in the stucco portion, I'm okay, as long as they keep it clean, I'd be okay with it.
Okay.
I don't know if I want necessarily want to see something that matches.
Especially if it's already nailed on and it's there,
Yeah,
then...
I can't see them recessing that thing. I mean,
So what I have as a condition so far is provide details for windows, surround, and installation for the variety of conditions. Recommend sheet metal surround and sill for windows at the corrugated metal.
Okay. And I have another comment regarding the awnings that was originally recommended by staff to lower the awnings to the window level. And on the sides, I believe there are two driveways on this property. They would be reduced to at least 4 inches, so they would still have some depth, however, not protruding to the driveway and
On the lower level.
on the lower level.
The lower one, yes.
And then using brushed aluminum for the trellis was discouraged by the board. We understand a sheet metal of any sort that's already being used around the building could be used for the trellis, and use a different color to contrast the building.
I think that's it's a consideration. I think it makes, it makes sense. Now, if you're dead set on doing the brushed aluminum,
God bless you.
yeah, God bless you, make it look good.
I like your suggestion better.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going to use something.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
It'll bring the green out of it.
And lastly, comment about the landscaping. The Palos Verde and the crepe myrtle plants should be moved to make sure that the driveway space is clear.
Driveway and the sidewalk.
And the sidewalk
trees.
are clear of plants. Correct? Am I correct?
Overhang.
So, and that's a condition. I do not have anything else.
Is there going to be an issue with the existing vinyl windows and putting any kind of a dark, I mean, they're white vinyl windows? You're mentioning maybe a darker color on the sill, or, I mean, you're dealing with, if you were replacing all the windows, this wouldn't be a discussion, but we're allowing him to leave the existing vinyl.
Well, he's
And
got to
so-
work on a color palette that works for
That
him.
works for that,
Yeah.
okay.
Good. So with that, is there a motion?
I would like to just repeat the conditions so that we have the wording correctly. Lower the awnings so that they provide sunshade to the windows. Reduce the projection at the lower level to a minimum of 4 inches. Then the next condition that Mr. Nazarian read was provide a color palette for all of the elements. Consider the moss green for the corrugated metal, potentially maroon color for the awnings, and there was another color that you maybe recommended for the trellis, making certain that the white vinyl windows are considered when designing the color palette. And then the condition for the landscaping reads, move the trees sufficiently away from the sidewalk and driveway so the canopy and root ball does not encroach upon and disturb those elements.
I move that we approve based on those conditions.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is a roll call to approve the project with those comments and conditions. Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
and Chairman Ellis.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
Good luck, sir. Give him back all of his, all right, we're going to pass those over back. Ready to move on? We're missing,
Okay.
are you doing it? You're
Yes,
doing it.
I
Oh,
am.
I'm sorry.
I am indeed.
How exciting.
Second case on tonight's agenda, the last case on tonight's agenda is case number 1-PDR 2011-014A. The project is located at 1376 Balmoral Drive, and the applicant is Sacco Marcusi. This is a project involving the demolition of the existing house and garage and constructing a new 4,380 square foot two-story structure with an attached three-car garage on the existing 10,519 square foot lot zoned R1R, and the entire neighborhood is zoned R1R, so the homes on hillside lots. The project might be familiar to you because it was actually presented for first-time submittal for Design Review Board last September, September 22nd, 2011. Excuse me, I need to move the panel, actually, so that you can actually see the project. It was presented for first-time review. However, it had to be continued because prior to going to DRB, the CUP for the project was appealed by the neighbor to the north, and so we were not able to hear the project. It had to go through the appeal process. The CUP was for the lot width, and this would be seen here. The lot width itself, because they were demolishing the home and constructing a brand-new home, it had to meet R1R standards, which would require a CUP for lot width less than 80 feet, as measured 15 feet back from the front property line. In this case, the particular project site had a 79-foot width, so approximately 1 foot shy of the required 80 feet. And the CUP was approved by the planning hearing officer. Other than standard conditions of approval, he also required that the front entryway, as you see here, actually was much taller. It went up to approximately 32 feet, which would be the permitted limit in the R1R zone. He requested that that front entryway, in order to be more compatible with the surrounding developments, be lowered to what you see now. The appeal was heard by the Planning Commission, and they upheld the planning hearing officer's determination to approve the CUP. That determination was also appealed by the same property owner, and it went to City Council. City Council ultimately approved the CUP for the new home on a lot with less than 79 feet back on March 17th of this year. Now, what you see before you essentially is and I'll go through the various parts really briefly of the staff report. In terms of site planning, the home has pretty much the same footprint as the existing structure. It's located in the center of the lot. The pool at the rear will be maintained, and they are maintaining the driveway, except now it's going to be, instead for a two-car garage, it's going to be a three-car garage. The staff comments included that the easterly side of the building, it's essentially a pretty rectangular, somewhat square building footprint. However, you have these undulations in other areas of the elevation building footprints, and the one along the east is rather flat, and you'll notice that in this elevation drawing right here, that there might be a little bit more undulation as shown in other elevations in terms of the building footprint as proposed. There's also a comment in the staff report that they are bringing back, though they're keeping the existing pool, they are actually creating this fire pit area, a sunken terrace, and then creating this little lower deck portion because they are changing the pool to be one of the infinity pools. So they're sort of bringing the deck and whatnot a little bit closer to the rear property line, and in terms of the landscape guidelines, that's the area that actually drops off. So there was just a comment made, perhaps they can move it away from the rear property line and closer to the flat building pad already. So those would be the site plan comments. Second portion of the staff report noted that mass and scale, as commonly or consistently mentioned throughout the CUP hearing, the neighborhood is a neighborhood of primarily two-story structures. There are a few single-family, single-story homes that are remaining. Obviously, this particular proposal is replacing a one-story structure, but it is consistent and compatible with the adjacent two-story homes. The overall height would be essentially just a little bit over 26 feet, which is substantially lower than the 32-foot flat roof portion for R1R structures, which could actually go up to 35 feet with a pitched roof. And in this case, in terms of mass and scale, again, you'll notice that pretty much on all elevations, the second floor is actually set back from the first floor. So again, that sort of reduces, even though it's somewhat of a simple box-like structure, because you have the second story set back on all elevations, you have various forms that are undulating on each side. The mass and perceived scale of the home has been reduced and is appropriate to its context. And last but not least, the design detailing. You'll notice that the proposal is essentially a neo-historic revival style with Spanish colonial revival influences. Big, long mouthful here. It is essentially smooth finish, steel troweled stucco. You'll have wrought iron detailing. They have two-piece clay tile roof, simulated divided light windows on the front. These are aluminum-clad wood windows, so with exterior muttons on the rear in order to actually maximize their views, because this is a hillside home. Essentially, the neighborhood then slopes downward. You have great views, so to not interrupt the view along the rear, they are proposing no divided lights, so no muttons on the rear. They have cast stone trim, limestone accent tiles. You'll notice they do have stone veneer on certain elements, essentially on the front as well on the base. There was a little bit of back and forth dialogue between staff regarding the location of certain areas, and comment made that perhaps some of the stone base veneer can be added to the bay window in the front, and that is something that the architect would like to see, and that is noted in one of the staff's comments at the end of the staff report. So with minor variations. Now, also, a previous proposal showed somewhat arched arcades or in the rear along the patio, and this is not part of this particular design presented to you, so we just want to ensure that this is something that this would be maintained. Staff is recommending approval of the project, and if you'd allow me to go back to the desk, I'll read over the proposed conditions.
Is there a material board?
There is.
Is it, right?
Material board is directly in front of
We have it.
Chair.
Chairman Ellis. Okay, so, overall, staff feels that the new house is appropriate for the neighborhood and the neighborhood context in terms of site planning, mass and scale, and design detailing. The conditions and considerations, the first one would just be to ensure the integrity of the windows, that all windows shown on the plans as having muttons should have true divided lights on the exterior of the glass pane, no interior muttons, that the windows at the rear need not have muttons as stated, that they all be traditional style. Typically for a historical type of revival piece, they usually have windows that are either single hung, double hung, or casement windows, so no sliders. And as proposed, the the aluminum-clad windows should be consistently used throughout the project, although if they'd like to go to fiberglass or aluminum or wood windows, those would be acceptable as well. The second item to ensure integrity would be that no foam moldings, beams, or rafter tails be used. And they are proposing stone cast moldings, but that somehow or other it doesn't get changed when it goes into plan check, so no foam molding. Again, that a previously proposed, the elongated arches along the rear would not be used. The fourth would be, and again, this is hearkening back to the comment made in regards to the mass and scale and also to that east elevation, that perhaps the ground floor elongated roof line and that the building wall along the east elevation could be broken up similarly to what is proposed at the second level or provided with greater undulation. Number 5 would be that the location of the stone veneer could be reevaluated in order to ensure design appropriateness in all elevations. And again, that the stone veneer be more used as a base accent and appropriately placed at base accent points. Number 6 would be that the decorative treatment of the chimney tops be reconsidered and redesigned to be less ornate or tall. You'll notice that in the elevation drawings behind you. Number 7 would be that the new sunken retreat, fire pit, and lower deck area below the pool in the rear yard be set further away from the rear property line and slope so as to better comply with the landscape guidelines for hillside development. And last but not least, the landscaping plan should be amended to feature all drought-tolerant and/or California-friendly trees, plants, shrubs, and ground cover. We actually distributed an updated landscape plan that we received just this afternoon in response to staff's comments. It appears that certain comments made by staff with regards to the landscape plan, there were plenty of camellias that were previously proposed, other trees that were not on the bewaterwise.com plant list. These items and landscaping have been substituted with more drought-tolerant, friendly native plant material in the submitted package, but it appears that there are just a few other items that need to be adjusted in the revised landscaping plan as well, but these are minor changes. So with that said, with those proposed considerations and conditions, staff recommends approval, obviously with conditions and consideration. I know that Mr. Sacco Marcucci, the staff architect, is in the audience, and along with the property owners.
Any comments for staff? All right. I have Mr. Marcucci, please. That's the only card I have on this project. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Design Review Commission. My name is Sacco Marcucci. I'm the project architect. My address is 320 Arden Avenue, Suite 120, Glendale, California. First of all, I'd like to thank Vilya for such a thorough description of the project from the get-go. We started this in 2004, and now it's to 2012. So we've gone through a lot of hurdles. Anyway, we're finally here. I read the conditions or considerations. Number 1 and 2, I'm okay. Obviously, we're going to use very high-quality materials as specified on the plans. So is number 3. We have eliminated those elongated arches, so obviously we agree with that. Number 4, the ground floor elongated roof line and the wall that is proposed to have undulation. Any minor changes to what we already have some recesses in that wall, and that easterly wall is, if you look at the perspective, the way or even the frontal elevation where I'm showing 3 buildings, there's enough vegetation there right now. There's hardly any way for public to view that wall, first of all. And secondly, the second floor is set back, as Vilya mentioned. The only thing that I might be able to do is actually break that roof line rather than having a continuous roof. I might be able to break it where the building is actually breaking so that that roof line at the first floor is not continuous on that easterly elevation. That I would gladly do that. But other than that, if I if I touch any of the walls, I'm going to lose, the rooms are already tight on that side, so if I push any of these walls, they're not going to be functional, so I would like to keep the layout. Number 5, the location of the stone veneer, I'm okay. Actually, I was just discussing this with my client, and we don't mind continuing the veneer at the base where we have a running band at about 2 feet above grade. We'll just continue that all around the building. And anyway, initially, a few years ago, when we proposed the project, that was part of our project to have that band, the stone veneer going around the building. So we would agree to that. Number 6, decorative chimneys. I'm not sure if the chimneys are that ornate. We have a copper cap, and then we have an opening which is treated with a wrought iron grill, very simple. And then we have cast stone trim that goes around the base. In terms of the height of the chimneys, we have to maintain the height because the code requires a minimum 2 feet height above the highest point of the roof within 10 feet of the chimney. So we have to maintain that height. We cannot reduce it. The sunken retreat, if you notice my landscape plan, I have screening type of plants along the southerly edge of the property, which those plants grow anywhere from 5 to 7 feet. So if there are any walls that are at best they're at minimum, they could easily be screened with this landscaping. And some of these features on the site plan are given. I don't want to take out the pool. So by keeping the pool, I'm lowering the deck to the south of it to create the infinity pool. By doing that, I need some space there for maintenance and going around the pool. So I'm really working with minimums. What staff is suggesting, actually, or to consider this is, I think my solution would be to, which I have done, is to change the planting screening type of plants to remedy that situation. Other than that, on the landscaping issues, I'm okay with that, and we'll work with the staff to comply. If you have any questions on the
I have one
project.
question.
Sure.
On this elevation,
Yes.
does this mean this is a little shelf that recesses in?
Yes. Those are shelves. So what we have is the stone.
It goes back about 12 inches?
Yeah, the stone, where we have a stone band at the face of the wall where we have recess, it goes all the way back to so it creates a shelf where they could put some small potted plants, flowering, stuff like that.
And what kind of stone, it doesn't specify what kind, is this real stone, is this imitation stone, is
You mean the
stone around the base?
around the base? It's real stone.
Just doesn't state that, that's why.
No, it's stone actually that comes in, they're done in such a way that when you install them, they would
Interlock.
have that interlocking feature that would be like a bond type of.
It's not natural stone, it's manufactured stone.
No, it's natural stone which is already prefabricated into panels,
Sections.
into sections. Rather than putting them piece by piece, it's already fabricated
Into a panel piece.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and on the corners, obviously, we get the single ones to make the turnaround and,
And the garage doors are
wood.
wood?
Yeah, they're
Are they
wood.
going to be the light color?
I think the color is,
It's on the material.
I think it's on the material board. I
The
have
one
called
here.
it out. It's sort of,
Same color as the trellis.
yeah, same color as the trellis, yes.
Don, any other questions? Sure. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Marquis.
thank you.
I have no other cards, unless, would you like to have anything to say? If not, I will close the public hearing. Oh, Thank you. That's why I figured you didn't turn in a card. So, thank you, sir. Mr. Simonian, you want to jump on this one?
Well, you've been at this since 2004. That's a long time. And anybody that goes to a city council hearing because of appeals certainly has been through the process. So I am glad that you are still with us and with the project, and you're pushing forward. In review of the design and the detailing that's been presented to us and the material board that's been presented to us, it holistically works. Overall, it's a design that has lots of articulation as far as the facades are concerned. It has a lot of attention to detail, such as the window surrounds, the type of windows, type of wood door, the cornices and the roof material. Everything has been worked out and thought out. And so in my opinion, there is not a lot of items that I could point at. Certainly there's different styles that one could incorporate, but a style has been chosen, and they've gone with the style, and they've detailed it correctly, and so there are no overwhelming items that pop up. So all in all, this is well thought out, and you could tell they've been at it for a while, and it's gotten refined with every hearing and every step of the way. As far as staff's comments and conditions are concerned, I believe the architect addressed them as far as which items they are amenable to. I think it is a very good idea to continue the band of that stone accent at the base, especially in the front. And once you do it, as you turn the corner, if you've really gone the distance of designing a house of this caliber, you might as well turn it around and take it to the rear. And by doing so, you have a nice solid band, and it'll just look substantial in that sense. There are a couple of minor thoughts that come to my mind. One is specifically with the colors that's chosen on the garage doors and on the trellis. You've gone with the lighter tone. I think the project could be better served if they become darker. That was one thought that popped up. The chimneys, I also think, is a little more elaborate than the design. I think what staff means by ornamental is that you're just immediately drawn to the chimneys, which is probably not where you want to take people's attention to. You rather have them, look at your home and assess that, and understand that, and appreciate it, as opposed to noticing something dark up there, which is what's going to end up happening with the continued use of them. And so I think it also is a good idea to tone them down, maybe get rid of the ornamental metal that surrounds it, because that just brings a lot of attention to it, and it just really adds to the mass of the building for no specific reason. It's something that you could see from several blocks away, and it doesn't have any function. As far as the window selections and the garage door and the front door that's been presented to us, it's all of high quality, and that works. I think it's also a good idea to not have grids on the view side, and the floor-to-ceiling windows are just the way to go. I would recommend a multi-sliding system, in fact, so you could open it up and have that indoor-outdoor integration. As far as the east elevation is concerned, I don't see as big of an issue, specifically after the architect pointed out the shelves. I think it's going to help a lot with the stone that wraps around the base, but I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say on that. Overall, I think it's well thought out and well executed, and I hope you could start building it soon, because you've been through a long process.
Mr. Yu? I'm sorry.
No, it's
You're
all
done? You're done?
up to you. Those are my comments.
2004. Wow. You persevered, and I think I mean, the project that you brought in front of us, I think it's a very well-done project. It's got a very nice sort of neutral palette to it, with everything coming together with the materials. It's a very high-quality material, house that you're proposing. I like that the design consistency is carried out throughout on all sides. I think that some of the staff recommendations, I think you've addressed most of them, and I'm actually okay with the chimney top. And almost, and that's all. That's a personal preference thing, and I think throughout, I mean, it's well done. You carried it through, and I really don't have any, objections to any part of it, and I'll be ready to approve it. So, okay.
Ms. Palmer?
As usual, I think this architect pays a lot of attention to details, so I think it's going to be a very nice project. I do have a problem with the chimneys. My eye was drawn to that immediately. So I think if that top was eliminated, it would bring down the height visually. I think the garage doors, that's why I asked the question, should be darker. I think it would give a little more depth to that, because it's just recessed a small bit. And I think the stone around the perimeter at the base solves a lot of the questions we have. So, and then the landscape changes are basically just some of the, I think on the left side it wasn't addressed, so I think that's minor. But overall, I think it's going to be a nice project.
Were you mentioning the surround on that side too? Because I thought the discussion was just putting that extra stone along here.
He was talking about going around.
All the way around?
Yeah.
Okay, on that part, okay, I missed that part of the
Yes.
conversation. I saw you drawing. Okay. I would agree with my associates. You've done a very nice job. The chimneys, yeah, I would have to agree with the majority here. They're a little over the top. Your comment, Mr. Simonian, your eye goes to them, is exactly what when you mentioned it, I said, you're right. That's the first thing I looked at was the chimneys. So I think that needs to be a little bit of a rethought. Other than that, I don't have any other concerns with the project.
Okay, so it appears that condition number 1, everyone's fine with, to maintain the integrity of the windows. Number 2, also to make sure that there are no foam molding details. Number 3 is no longer applicable because, again, they've presented the rear patio with no arched openings. They're just straight across. Number 4, now, should that be removed in light of the fact that the shelves, this was the comment in regards to the ground floor elongated roof line and building wall along the east?
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
So just eliminate that as well?
Right.
Right.
Okay. Number 5, the location of the stone veneer could be reevaluated in order to ensure design appropriateness on all elevations, or that should be just replaced with the fact that the stone accents shall continue around the entire perimeter at the ground level as a band.
And did we have that the stone base should also be raised to the bottom of the windows as well? Did we hear that from the board?
Say that again?
That the stone base should be raised to the bottom of the windows because there's only a small gap?
Then it'd have to shift, because
Then
there's
it'd
some
have-
that are already at the bottom.
I think the architect.
You want it to the band, correct?
A consistent look.
Like on the
Consistent.
west, it's already at the bottom, though.
I think the architect can.
Okay, but that the stone band continues around, so that is a change to 5.
Correct. Number 6 is going to actually be maintained, and that the chimney tops could be reconsidered and toned down. Okay. Number 7, was there any board consensus in regards to the location of the proposed deck, fire pit? Nothing? No, you're fine? Okay, so we'll go ahead and eliminate proposed condition number 7. Number 8 is still going to be included in regards to ensuring that all drought tolerant. And the new condition would be that the garage doors and trellis be painted a darker color complementary to the color palette.
And then we will also include in condition number 8 that landscape plan as submitted at the board meeting is acceptable because there are revisions. It still has to be modified. Okay. And since the elevation guess there was a new elevation tonight submitted. No? So, that showed the arches flattened? That wasn't,
All right. So with those comments and conditions, do I have a motion for approve with comments and conditions?
I move to approve the project with those conditions.
A second.
I have a motion by Board Member Simonian and a second by Board Member Yu. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Palmer? Yes. Board Member Yu?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Sorry about that. And Chairperson Ellis?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously, 4-0. Thank you. Let me see if we have
Thank you.
any.
Good luck with your project.
Good job.
Thank you. We do have minutes.
Couple sets.
We have minutes from April the 19th.
I'm sorry, which one would you like? I have May 17th and April 19th. And April 19th?
April 19th.
We can vote on that one?
Yes,
Because
board mem-
oh, no, you can't.
Board Member Ellis, Palmer, and Insua were
Yeah,
here.
but I don't have 3 votes that were here.
Actually, to approve minutes, you only need 2 out of the 3.
I got it. We got that.
So
Who can second?
I apologize. Hold on 1 second. Lost the paperwork,
All
and
right.
we will fill that out shortly.
Saldivar, that was it.
Apologize. Okay, so from the 19th, and I have a motion by Board Member Palmer. Was that a motion?
That was.
To approve? And a second by Board Member Ellis, or Chairperson Ellis. So I believe you're all in favor of approving the minutes.
Aye.
Great. And now we have the minutes. I do not have a copy of those in front
I
of me.
have
So if Board Member Ellis, if you don't mind,
Uh,
since you have those.
Mr. Yu can relax. Ellis, Palmer, and Simonian were here for May 17th, which was Heron Way, which was the last time we were here, our last afternoon.
I'll move to approve those.
Excellent.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Board Member Palmer, a second by Board Member Simonian. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 3-0.
There you go.
At that being said, any other announcements?
No.
Modifications? Move to,
Okay.
motion to adjourn?
I'll accept that
Meeting is
motion to
adjourned.
adjourn.